On this episode of Locked On Angels, the Halos saw something in Brock Burke last year, and they adjusted something in his game, and now, Johnny, he's one of the better bullpen pieces on this team. So what did they do, and did the Angels actually fix somebody? I thought they don't do that. It's time to get Locked On with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube and leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by Monarch Money. You can take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year.
Happy Tuesday to you, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
It's our fourth season here as the host of Locked On Angels, talking Angels baseball with you every Monday through Friday, every single weekday, every single business hour of the day. No, just kidding. We just do 30 minutes. 30 minutes is all you need each and every day. So we are happy to be here 5 days a week for you. On today's show, who's going to hit second in this lineup? Ron Washington had his thoughts, but Mike and I have our thoughts too, and we're going to talk about it. But what did the Halos do to fix Brock Burke? We'll get into that conversation as well. But first, Mike, there are tons of roster updates, kind of starting with some breaking news from last night, right?
Yeah, the Angels acquired left-handed pitcher Angel Perdomo from the Atlanta Braves. They traded with the Braves.
Surprise. Yeah, color me surprise, Michael.
It was an exchange for a player to be named later or cash considerations. In a corresponding move, Scott Kingery has been designated for assignment. So that's an interesting move. We'll get into that in just a second, John. But Jeff Fletcher tweeted that Perdomo is 30 years old, missed last season with Tommy John surgery, had a 3.72 ERA with the Pirates in 2023. This spring, 2 earned runs in 8 1/3 innings pitched. Another lefty has been added to the mix. And so right now we know that he's out of options and he is a bullpen guy. John, his last few seasons in the big leagues, he's only had 3. He's only really had 1 full year, and that was 2023 with the Pirates. And he went 3-2 with a 3.72 ERA in 30 games, 29 innings pitched, 44 Ks to 11 walks, a 1.10 WHIP, a 3.01 FIP, and a 1.21 ERA plus that season. Jared Timms from Talking Halos tweeted that Perdomo's got a fastball between 93 and 95 miles an hour, a slider between 83 and 85, and a change between 88 and 90 miles an hour. John, what are your thoughts on the move to get Perdomo and then the designating for assignment Scott Kingery move?
Somebody's leaving the bullpen. I don't know if it's Quijada. I don't know if it's Jose Suarez, but somebody just lost their job, Mike, because we can't have another lefty in this pitch mix. So that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I texted our good friend, Lindsey Crosby, former host of Locked On MLB Prospects and current host for Braves Today. He also writes about the Braves and covers them. Texted him and said, hey, feels like a lock for the Halos bullpen. Good spring. And he said he was really good and really coming around after he shook off some of the rust, obviously coming off that Tommy John surgery, getting back into the game. Lindsey said, good pickup for you. Actually, he wrote good puck up for you, but that was, a text. It didn't autocorrect for him. So no, he said it was a good pickup. So I trust Lindsey. And you guys know that we trust Lindsey implicitly. So great to hear that. But like I said, Mike, somebody's out of this bullpen. Yeah. Look for a DFA. I don't know why I'm singing that, but I think that's the joy I get from the possibility of ditching one of these guys who has just not looked great in spring, and that's Quijada and Jose Suarez. Well, they've looked worse beyond spring, but the fact is, if he's sitting 93, 95, he's already throwing harder than Jose Quijada. Mm-hmm. He has a slider and a changeup, so maybe he's the Quijada replacement. I know that we all want Jose Suarez to be DFA'd, but maybe he's the Quijada replacement. Now, when it comes to Scott Kingery, I'll be interested to see if he gets claimed, and if not, if he'll accept an assignment to probably AAA Salt Lake. But Mike, it didn't make sense to have him on the 40-man so that they could make room for some of the moves they might have to make, because they are going to have to add a Tim Anderson or a JD Davis or something like that. And so for him to be off the 40-man roster, I think they want to keep him around. I really do. But I don't think that he was going to be the guy that was going to make the team out of spring training. So those are my thoughts on that. Mike, there's more news about pitchers, isn't there?
Yeah. Michael Peterson, bullpen piece. He got sent to AAA Salt Lake yesterday, and then they reassigned Juan Flores to minor league camp. So the spring training roster is now at 37 players. And you mentioned the bullpen, John. So here's the names that are floating around right now for this pen. Kenley Jansen, Ben Joyce, Brock Burke. We're going to talk about him later in the show. He didn't have any options, so he's going to be in this bullpen. Then Garrett McDaniels, a lefty. He's a Rule 5 draftee. Got to be on the 40-man, or he's going to be sent back to the Dodgers. There's Quijada, you mentioned. He didn't have options. Ryan Zephyr-John, we'll talk about him later on this week. He's somebody that they're counting on to be a late-inning guy. Jose Suarez, lefty, no options. Chase Silseth is in the mix, but he'll probably start in AAA. Perdomo is here now. No options for him. And then, of course, Ryan Johnson, who is a non-roster invitee, guy they drafted last year, hasn't thrown a major league inning yet, but has been pretty good this spring, right?
By the way, Sam Blum of The Athletic wrote a really great article about Ryan Johnson. And, you know, of course, he touched on the fact that he was the compensatory pick for Shohei Ohtani, but the brunt of the article was some really great stuff about Ryan Johnson. But toward the end of the article, they said, hey, how do you feel about that connection to Shohei? And Ryan was just like, I don't know. I don't think about it. And so he's like, if people want to put that on me, then okay, but I'm not thinking about it.
That's why I want him on this roster, John. He's the perfect guy. I've said it on the show multiple times. He just doesn't care. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way.
Yeah.
He just doesn't care about the pressure. He's just going to go out there and pitch, which I love about him so far and what we've seen this spring. John, of course, there's Jack Kohanowitz and Reed Detmers. They're in that battle for the 5th spot. We should know by next week at this time, if not before that, maybe middle of this week, where everybody kind of lands as they get ready to leave Arizona. But I do like your thoughts on getting rid of a Quijada and a Suarez, and perhaps having Kohanowitz and Detmers on the opening day roster along with an Angel Perdomo. Just feels like that's a more serious move, right? You see a lot of everydayers say this team is so unserious with Jose Suarez, right? Like this feels like a serious, but it feels like they're actually going to try to compete this year by not just hoping that guys are good, but actually putting guys with a lot of potential to be good on this roster to start the season.
I agree, and I think that that's going to be the move here shortly. So we'll talk about that when and if it happens. Mike, Yoan Moncada spoke about his injury. Remember, he's got the thumb bruise, and then there was some more analysis on that, and it seemed to be worse than initially anticipated. But Moncada said, I feel like I'm going to be ready for opening day. That's what I'm aiming for right now. That's my mindset. Ron Washington said if Moncada can play, Rengifo will be at second base. So where does that leave Tim Anderson? Now, he's having a pretty good spring after starting out a little slow, but he could be used as a bench player no matter his role. Anderson said he's going to be ready. He said, the more reps I've been getting, the more comfortable I've been feeling. But, I don't want to get too far ahead. I want to take this a step at a time, and I don't want to look too far out that way. So there's that from Moncada and Tim Anderson. What about Kyron Paris, the guy who won the game for the Halos yesterday, and Christian Moore? What do you say?
Wash said that the Angels would like to get those guys a bit more seasoning in the minor leagues. He said they've taken tremendous strides, but it's the little things that you gather by playing the game that they have to get. And he was talking about decision-making. He's used that phrase a lot with a lot of the young players. He says those guys certainly are in our future and they're going to be good baseball players, but they've just got to keep gaining experience by being on the field and having the opportunity to react to the things that we see them doing. That's going to be part of their game. They got to work hard. They got to ask questions. And we want them to be good, but we also understand that they are very, very young. Sounds like Paris and Moore are not going to be on the opening day roster. At least Moore is not a surprise, but I'm still I'm still not sure that Kyron Paris won't be here based off of what we've seen so far from him and from the potential injuries. What's going to happen with Moncada? What about Rengifo? What are your thoughts?
I feel like we're going to see them at some point, and I don't think it's going to take very long, especially with Kyron Paris, and especially if Moncada isn't ready to go by opening day. Now, I appreciate the fact that he's like, no, I'm going to be ready. I'm doing this. And so I appreciate that from him. But if it doesn't happen, then I think you need somebody like a Kyron Paris on this roster. Mike, I mentioned it yesterday. Matthew Lugo, I said maybe they should give him a shot at third. I actually went and looked at the minor league stats. They weren't great. Not the defensive stats. They weren't great. But I thought, hey, getting around Ron Washington, that might have helped him out. But honestly, watching him play the outfield and watching him do his thing this spring, super impressive. He's hitting 326 before yesterday's game, 832 OPS this spring. Even if he doesn't crack the opening day roster, I think that he's going to be the next man up, as I was saying. And I think Wash feels the same way. He said, we were told that he could swing the bat, and he showed us that. The rest of his game, he's just got to keep working on it till the opportunity presents itself. And we're not out of camp yet, but he's very impressive. And we know we've got that piece if he doesn't make the team. So with all that said, feels like Ron is not in any rush to rush anyone, right?
Yeah.
Is that a good thing? How do you feel about that?
It's something that we talked about yesterday, and I mentioned that with these young guys in the spring breakout game, it's good that these guys are going to have some time to work on some stuff in the minor leagues, and that we have a roster that we can be confident in, and we don't have to rush a Caden Dana, or we don't have to rush a Sam Altaguiri. We don't have to rush a Christian Moore, that we actually have players that can fill in. And if they don't pull their weight, or if they're not doing what we've asked them to do, then we can go to these guys maybe after the first or second month and have them come up and see what they can do depending on where the Angels sit. So I'm looking forward to watching these guys develop in the minor leagues. I am of the opinion that Kyron Paris, I think, has proved to be somebody that should at least be a backup on this opening day roster, if not starting somewhere at second base, or if there needs to be room for him, like throw him in there at shortstop, right? Like, I think that those are the two options that you can have with Kyron Paris. But I do like that there isn't this hurry up offense with these young guys and pushing them to the major league level before they're ready.
It's interesting to me. Like, Ron's been around the game. He's been around tons of players. He has this air sometimes that he knows a little bit better than the players themselves. And I see that in the way he talks about like Lugo and Kyron Paris. And I totally understand where he's coming from. Like I said, been around the block. He's helped tons of players along his career. I think about something like Mickey Moniak last year when they told him, hey, bro, you're not a home run hitter. And I think that really screwed up Mickey Moniak last season, because remember, he was hitting the ball really well when he got called up. And I think that he was kind of flexing his power a little bit. Now he's got to make better swing decisions. And so I think there's a delicate balance of who these players are at their heart and at their core and what they're able to do on the field. And then Ron Washington also seeing that, hey, maybe a little bit more seasoning is going to be beneficial to these guys. So there's a tension there for sure. And I think there's also a tension among fans of let the guy play, let Kyron Paris play. And then there's also a tension of, well, Ron kind of knows what he's talking about. And so there is something to that when it comes to these young players. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up on the show, does Ron Washington know what he's talking about when it comes to lineup construction? He shared his strategy. We're going to examine what he said, and we're going to give our thoughts, and we'll get into that in just a minute.
When it comes to fueling your body, quality does matter. That's why Just Ingredients is changing the game with clean, high-quality products designed to support better health and peak performance. Just Ingredients offers NSF-certified line of protein powder, electrolytes, pre-workout, and creatine, all rigorously tested to ensure that they're free from substances banned by major athletic organizations. Just Ingredients is also partnered with two-time MVP Bryce Harper, who trusts their products to fuel his training and recovery. Just Ingredients prioritizes wholesome, nourishing ingredients without the artificial junk. So whether you're recovering after a workout or you need that energy boost, their grass-fed whey protein and pre-workout deliver real results. Just visit justingredients.com/Bryce Harper. And when you go there, use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first order. And for wellness tips, follow at just.ingredients on Instagram.
Hey, you know what? I want my name as part of a link like Bryce Harper. That's pretty cool. Hey, today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? And you get surprised by that. I hate that feeling. And between dining out, online shopping, other purchases, it's easy to lose track. And Monarch Money comes in to be your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, which I love. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, and you can stop managing your money and start building wealth. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use our code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. You're already saving money. Locked On MLB is the code. monarchmoney.com. Use the code Locked On MLB for half off your first year.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Johnny, Jeff Fletcher from the OC Register had a great article last week about Brock Burke, spoke about his past struggles, especially with the Rangers last year. Then he talked about how things turned around when he joined the Halos after the Rangers DFA'd him last season. The Angels claimed him on waivers, and when he arrived, he was approached with a very simple idea. The Halos asked Brock Burke to move from his starting position about 8 inches more towards the center of the pitching rubber, and he was throwing from the far end towards third base before he got there. They said, hey, why don't you move over? It probably will be better for you. And the results, Johnny,
scooch over.
The results were fantastic. Brock Burke said, I threw one bullpen and I instantly felt better. Then I took it into the game the next day or two. And after that, the rest, Johnny, is history, so they say.
You know, as excited as we are that Brock Burke performed the way that he did, Bryce Patrick, host of Locked On Rangers, was very upset that the Rangers lost out on him and the Angels picked him up. That's a shame. You won a World Series. Shut your mouth. Brock's career has been up and down. He hasn't solved all of his issues, but since he moved on the mound, the results have been there. Remember, he had a 9.22 ERA in 13 games with the Rangers last year and a 5.31 ERA with the Rangers AAA team. But then he comes over to the Angels, debuts on August 16th, and from that point on, Mike, a 3.54 ERA over 20 1/3 innings pitched with 25 strikeouts and only 7 walks. Opponents only hit .213 against him, and he gave up 1 home run in that time.
And the results continued to show up this spring, Johnny. Entering yesterday, Burke has pitched in 6 games, 6 2/3 innings, 6 hits, 1 earned, 9 Ks to just 1 walk. And according to Brock, he said this move helped him clean up his mechanics. He said, I'm not fighting so much to get back to the center of the plate. Now, he didn't come out of nowhere, right? He was pretty good with the Rangers, one of the most dependable relievers in 2022. He posted a 1.97 ERA over 82 1/3 innings pitched. Then the next season and a half kind of lost his way, and a lot wasn't going well for him. And it all needed to just change by him scooching over a little bit. He said the Rangers never really gave him a life raft, suggesting that this move on the rubber wasn't something that they even talked about. He said, I'm looking at my mechanics and I was thinking, like, why is the ball going here? Or why am I throwing stuff right down the middle rather than hitting my spots? He said, it just had everything to do with where I sat up. And he said, man, just to think that it was as simple as that was mind boggling for him. So John, I know that I'm going to be facetious when I ask this question, but I thought the Angels don't figure this stuff out. You know, everybody else leaves and they go to other teams and they get so much better. And then we're always told about how they're so much better. Like Griffin Canning, all of a sudden he's fantastic with the Mets. Yeah, because his opponents have been AA opponents and he should be good in spring training. Talk to me in July and August, and then we'll talk about those numbers, but I digress. John, the Angels figured something out. I thought they didn't do this, right?
Yeah, well, and look, it has everything to do with who's in charge now. And I think it has everything to do with somebody like Barry Enright being the pitching coach. And yeah, it's his first year. It's Barry Enright's first year as a pitching coach. But I think that he's been very valuable to this team. I've been a big fan. Number one, because he's been transparent about the fact that, hey, here's the application we want to give to each pitcher. They need to throw strikes, right? That was the big thing coming into spring last year, and emphasizing that. This year seems like he's getting a little bit more dynamic with each of the pitchers, and I love that they were able to figure something out with Brock Burke. Mike, I think that this leads me to believe that they can figure something out with Kyle Hendricks. Remember when they signed him, it was noted and reported that the Angels saw something he wasn't doing right with the Cubs and went, you know what? We can fix that. Now, having said that, they need to fix Caden Dana's release point, and I don't know if that happens in AA or AAA or with a major league club, but somebody talk to that kid about his release point, because that's exposing all of his good pitches. So all of that to say, it is great that the Angels got one. They won one. And I love that you were being facetious, because I get so tired of the conversation. Oh, the Angels ruin everybody. They never fix anybody. It just shows that other than everydayers and hardcore Angel fans, there's a lot of people out there, especially from other teams, that they're not paying attention. They're not paying attention to what's going on. That's why it's important to watch your local Locked On show, like Locked On Angels, or if you're a fan of basketball, they've got Lakers here in town, Clippers, that sort of thing, or whatever the case may be, because you're not going to hear this kind of stuff on ESPN. You're not going to hear it on MLB Network or anything like that. This is the place to where you can drill in and drill down on the fundamental changes that people are making with the Angels. I think this is a great example of that. But continue your thoughts for me on being facetious, because I like facetious, Mike.
Well, listen, to be fair, I know that Matt Wise didn't do anything for this pitching staff, or the staff was not great for the previous pitchers. I get that. But I also love that Barry Enright is in his second year, and they're already starting to figure some things out with these young pitchers, especially bringing in like a Brock Burke and going, hey, if you just moved over, that actually would be a benefit to you. Or Kyle Hendricks, you're a veteran, but we've identified some things. And I think the narrative is going to start to change. And I think this could be a narrative changing season, not just for the Halos and being more victorious than not, but I actually think it could be a narrative changing season for the coaches and them figuring some things out with not just the pitchers, but also with the hitters. We talked about this just the other day on the show, where we have Johnny Washington allowing these hitters to have a personalized strategic approach, not saying, hey, everybody just do this, but hey, if you're going to use the leg kick, use the leg kick. If you're going to do the toe tap, do the toe tap, but just be consistent in that. So your approach is going to be effective when you're against these pitchers from other teams. So I think that the narrative around these coaches will change this year if it hasn't already. And I think Brock Burke is just one of many examples of what we're going to see from this coaching staff in 2025.
All right, I'm going to tell you why I'm laughing, because I looked it up while you were talking. Somebody I know in the comments said, did you see Griffin Canning strike out 9 against the Mets yesterday? Yeah, but you know what he did in the first inning? Gave up a home run to Josh Slow. So like, what's changed? Yeah, right. Big boy can strike out people, and he gave up a home run in the first.
If you go to baseballreference.com, it tells you who he's been pitching against, and the quality of opponents is 7.9 out of 10. 7.9 is AA and a little bit of AAA. That's who he's pitching against. So should he strike out 9? Absolutely. But yes, he gave up a home run in the first inning. Homie does that all of the time.
Right.
Patrick Sandoval does that all of the time. Listen, if they do well with the Mets and with the Red Sox, more power to them.
Bless
but you
them, right?
sucked here. And that's the problem. And is that on the coaching staff? Perhaps, but it was Matt Wise, right? But you couldn't do it here. And so get out of town, play well somewhere else. That's totally fine. I'm going to enjoy the players we have right now.
Yeah, I'd rather watch Jorge Soler hit a bomb in the first inning than Griffin Canning give up a bomb in the first inning.
Everydayers, get the supplies that you need from the site made for skilled trades. It's supplyhouse.com. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, With a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 plus top brands, you're going to find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. And if you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And if you're a trade pro and you're looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands upon thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage of this, and now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM, and you can start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. And then you can use our promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order at supplyhouse.com.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Mike Ron Washington spoke about the lineup, and there were a lot of comments around that. And I have my feelings. I'm sure you have your feelings. But let's recap where we've been. Wash has been using the catcher in the number 2 spot, Darno, and Logan O'Hoppe. And this is something that's been discussed on the show before, and one of our great everydayers pointed out. The reason is so that they can get their at-bats with a minimum number of innings behind the plate, but that's not the plan for the regular season. He said he still has some questions about who will be at number 2 in the lineup. He said Rengifo, Kevin Newman, and Tim Anderson are the leading candidates to hit second. They will follow Taylor Ward leading off and hit before Mike Trout and Jorge Soler, who will be 3 and 4.
All right, so Wash said on the second hitter in the lineup, I always describe the second hole guy as a situational guy, a guy that can hit the ball to the right side, a guy that can bunt, a guy that can hit and run, a guy that can use the squeeze. Don't talk about the squeeze, Wash. He's going to get 400 at bats if he's an everyday player to do whatever he wants to do with his at bats. But on occasion in that position, I'm going to ask him to execute. I'm going to ask him to be the guy in that position that is not going to be selfish. Now, this feels like something that you brought up, Johnny, in the first segment. It feels very traditional. Ron Washington, it feels very, he knows better than anybody else, not in an arrogant way, but just in an expert experience sort of way. It's what it sounds like. But this is a very traditional approach to a lineup when we've talked often about how the lineup could be utilized to the best potential by putting the best player at each of the spots. We talked about the 1 through 10 lineup with Mike Trout leading off and then potentially being the 10th batter, right? We've also talked about where these hitters actually fit well in this lineup. And a lot of the conversation kind of comes back to Mike Trout being somebody who isn't hitting third, but maybe even leading off or being at the top or maybe number 2 in this order. What do you think about this approach of having the traditional number 2 hitter be a slap ball hitter, bunter? I'm going to squeeze him over. I'm going to hit it to the right side. I'm going to move this guy here. Give me your thoughts.
Look, I have my frustrations around the idea that, number 1 is I think Trout leading off. I've never been a big Trout leading off guy, but at the same time, I love that 1 through 10 idea that we talked about when we were talking about lineup construction. But the second thing is, analytically, number 2 should be the best guy on your team hitting number 2 because they'll get the most at bats and they have the opportunity to do something with that. But look, Mike, I guess I understand the frustration with this, and I am a little bit frustrated because I think that there are better lineups out there. We even talked about where guys are the best historically. Like Taylor Ward is a great cleanup hitter. And when you look at the numbers, it's because he sits on that fastball and he hits that fastball real well. And he also does damage on the changeup. Not very good against the slider, but he does numbers on the fastball and the changeup. But I say all this because I guess what I mean to say is I'll believe it when I see it, right? I'll believe it when I see it. If it's Rengifo at number 2, is that all that different than what we did a year ago, I don't think it's all that different, right? I think that somebody like Rengifo has been in that number 2 spot. I think that, later on we saw Zach Neto in that number 2 spot as well, and he performed decently, if off the top of my head, but overall he had a great season at number 2 and even down in the bottom of the order as well. But all that to say, I guess I get it. I don't want to hear about the squeeze play because that was an absolute disaster last year. When Ron Washington called for it, there were situations where it made no sense and he took no accountability for it. The guy that was pitching couldn't even hit the zone, and he makes Luis Guillorme do the squeeze bunt. That was an absolutely ridiculous thing. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, right, Mike? Like, Ron, like I said, all the respect, been around the block, knows a lot, has helped a ton of players, but then to not take accountability for that squeeze play and say, maybe I shouldn't have called for it. It's just, it bothers me. And so I guess, again, I'll believe it when I can see it. Luis Rengifo, he's a switch hitter, so he makes sense in that spot. And, I guess 1 and 2 are usually decent leadoff guys. Like we saw Nolan Shonowell up there as well last season. So if you have guys with good on base percentage, I get it. But I think at the end of the day, I want somebody who's going to battle up there. And that's one thing I have seen from guys like Tim Anderson and Louis Rengifo this spring. And I know Rengifo hasn't had that many at bats, but to me, they battle up there. And so if you can exhaust a pitcher and get them to throw 5-6 pitches at you, at the minimum, that's a really good thing as well. But what are your thoughts on this lineup construct?
2 thoughts. One, I think if it's going to be Rengifo, he's got to be the 300 hitter Rengifo and the 24 stolen bags in 79 games Rengifo. He's got to be that guy.
And he's got to do it for a full season. He can't get hurt, right?
Absolutely. And if he is going to move runners over, I get that then you have Mike Trout up at the plate with the potential to knock in some runs. And last year he had 10 home runs and just 19 RBIs because nobody was on base in front of him. So I want people on base in front of Mike Trout if he's going to hit third. So if that's who's going to be there, I want that version of Rengifo. If not, then just stick Zach Neto back in that spot because he was so good last year at number 2. Second thought, John, is Ron Washington is at his best when you get 80% Ron Washington. And what I mean by that is he's going to bring 80% of his experience to the table, and then 20% he's going to be flexible and agile. And when he's flexible and agile, this team is operating on all cylinders. But when he's Ron Washington and he's saying, that kid, he's got to do this, and we're not going to bring him up, and that feels like that's 100% Ron Washington.
Yeah,
and
that's
that
a good way to
doesn't
put
work.
it.
That doesn't work with this team, right? The Joe Adell's got to get that bag. That's 80% Ron Washington with some flexibility. Right. But the Kyron Paris, that kid, he's it's John Cena talking to Cody Rhodes. Hey kid, right? Like that's just not how it works, right? You need to have a bit of flexibility and agility along with your experience, and that I think is the best version of Ron Washington.
That's a really good way to put it, honestly, because it does feel like, when there's room for flexibility with Ron Washington, that gives you the best version of the team. Well said, my friend and my brother.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball with our friends Matt and Dom. You can find their show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, be sure you give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and connect with us at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram, whether you're watching or listening. Come on over to today's show, get in the YouTube comments. We'd love to hear from you. We always do our best to respond to the comments and, when life willing, right, Mike? And so, we'd love to hear from you there. Mike, what do we have on deck for Wednesday's show?
Well, who's going to play center? We know it's going to be Adell or Moniak, but the wonder is it going to be Adell over Moniak or Moniak over Adell? Or are they going to kind of be a combination out there? There's a lot of questions. Wash gave his thoughts on some of the things that he's looking for, and we're going to share those with you tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right, looking forward to that conversation. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Wednesday.
That Monday Night Raw segment between Cena and Cody Rhodes.
Shut up.
So good. Hey, how's that AEW thing?
You're a WW dweeb.